Asking someone why they believe what they believe or where their rituals come from is always an interesting question, and basically it breaks down into four different categories of answers, and these are called the sources of belief. So this is a diagram that shows the four sources of belief laid out next to each other, and these four sources are faith, tradition, reason, and experience. This is loosely based on a theory that John Wesley came up with. He was the founder of the Methodist Church, and I've tweaked it a little bit. I also changed the shape, but essentially the theory is the same. Basically, whether you're talking about religion, your belief in God, or just like why you have a Christmas tree in your house, if you were to ask somebody, why do you believe the things you believe? Why do you do the things that you do? Their answer is going to fall into one of these four categories. And really, before we start, I want to begin by saying that none of these four are better than the others, and all of us at different points in our lives will fall into different categories when we're answering questions, but it's still a useful tool to know which of these we identify with the most, or which of these our family identifies with the most, because it helps you understand why you've established the beliefs that you have, and also helps you recognize why other people are holding the beliefs that they hold. This is especially important when you come into conflict with somebody who has a different source of belief than you do. If you notice, faith and reason are sort of at opposite ends of the circle from each other, and that's because people who are faith-based believers and people who are reason-based believers usually have a very difficult time seeing eye to eye. And the same thing is true for tradition-based believers and experience-based believers. So we're going to talk about each of these on its own. While we're going through this, think about which of these four sources maybe fits the way that you approach problems of belief, or questions about where your traditions come from. Think about where your family gets their traditions, their rituals. And let's begin with faith. So faith-based believers usually believe the things they believe based on, well, obviously faith, but not to use the word in the definition, based on their feelings or their gut. So normally what you'll see in a faith-based believer is a strong belief in scripture. So I'm going to be approaching this from obviously a Christian lens, but this is true of any faith, whether, it's Hinduism, Buddhism, even atheism. You're going to see a strong belief rooted in like the fundamentals of the faith. Obviously atheism doesn't have a scripture, but whatever the fundamental or base of your faith is, your belief system is, faith-based believers usually put a lot of stock in that. Faith-based believers also do not require proof for what they believe. So if you ask someone who believes in God, why do you believe in God? They will usually say, no, I just do. I have faith. Lastly, for a faith-based believer, one of the strong tells is that they usually base their decisions on feelings rather than ideas. So why do I believe in God? I feel like God exists. I feel God's presence. These are hallmarks of faith-based belief. Now, each of these four sources of belief are going to have strengths and weaknesses if you fall into one of these categories. For example, a faith-based believer, the strength of having a faith-based belief is that you usually have good instincts. Faith-based believers like to follow their gut, and so their gut rarely leads them wrong. They're used to using their feelings to make these important choices. Weaknesses, on the other hand, of being a faith-based believer is that they're not usually that great at explaining what they believe or why they believe what they believe. So if someone says, I believe in God, and you ask them why, if they're a faith-based believer, they might just say, I don't know, I just do. It's just something I have faith in. So their explanations may not be that good, but usually they have a very strong grounded faith because they're so good at following their gut. Up next, we have tradition-based belief. Tradition-based believers are really based in ancient truth, or the idea that something's been done over and over. A really simple example of a tradition-based belief is even these little baseline rituals that you might see at Christmas or Easter time. For most of us, if you were to ask someone, why do you put up a Christmas tree at Christmas time? The answer is not really going to be that based in religion or belief. You don't put up a Christmas tree because you believe in Jesus. You put up a Christmas tree probably because it's something your family's always done. That's a tradition-based belief. It's not based in your gut feelings or in any scientific rationale. It's just based on the idea that that's what you do, right? Why do you set off fireworks on the 4th of July? It's just what you do, right? It's tradition. So tradition goes back to these ancient truths, and latches on to these ideas that have stood the test of time. Traditions are going to look for the importance of the test of time, the fact that religions have been around for a while, and as such, a tradition-based believer probably won't put a lot of stock in a faith or a religion that is relatively new. They're going to like the fact that Christianity is thousands of years old. They're not going to want to jump in with something like Scientology that just cropped up recently. Tradition-based believers also try to follow the original teaching. So if you're looking at something like Christianity, they're going to want to hold to these very old, very long-standing beliefs, rituals. They're going to want to go back to what did the original apostles do, and we want to keep doing that thing that's been around since the beginning of the religion. Obviously, a strength of a tradition-based believer is that they're not easily led astray. If someone comes along and says, hey, you should come join my cult, tradition-based believers are going to be like, no thanks, your cult just got started, my religion's thousands of years old. And that's a good point, right? If a religion is thousands of years old, there must be something to it. And plus, by being around for a long time, religions have a long time to work out the kinks and figure out what they actually believe. On the other hand, the weakness of a tradition-based belief is that tradition-based believers are not usually open to new ideas. So you may come along and say, hey, I've got this really great idea, and here are my reasons for believing it. And a tradition-based believer's basically just going to say, you know what, we've never done it that way before. We don't really want to try anything new. Up next, we have reason. Reason-based believers are usually extremely logical. This is the person who has like an explanation for everything that they believe, why they believe it. Reason-based believers are grounded in facts, in data, in science. If you ask them why they believe in God, they're not going to say, well, I just do. They're going to have a long, drawn-out philosophical explanation for why the facts dictate what they believe. Reason-based believers, thus, are not guided by emotion. They usually take a long time making their decisions, and they want to gather as much data as they can before they decide what they're going to believe in. A reason-based believer, if you ask them, why do you put up a Christmas tree around Christmas time, they're not going to say, oh, because we've always done it this way. They're going to have, a logical approach, like, I like the way it makes my house smell, or, because it's been scientifically proven that having an evergreen tree in your house improves your mood by 4% or something like that. Obviously, the strengths of reason-based believers is that they are grounded, they're logical, they are very good at explaining what they believe. On the other hand, their weaknesses is that they're not usually open to mystery, which you can get into trouble in the world of theology, because although theology is very logical and very grounded and uses data to draw conclusions, there's also a lot of mystery, right? Like when we get into things like Jesus being 100% human and 100% God, a reason-based believer is going to be like, well, some of this stuff makes sense, but 100%, that doesn't quantify. And they don't really like the idea that there are mysteries in the universe. If there's something they can't understand or can't put a number to, they have a very difficult time accepting it. Last on our list for today is experience. And you may have guessed that this was the next one, and the title kind of gives away how it works. Experience-based believers like to believe things based on what they have personally seen and experienced in their life. As such, they tend to be very empathetic, meaning they are in touch with the feelings of other people. They like hearing what other people think about things and making their decisions based on other people's viewpoints and feelings. It doesn't mean they make their decisions based on feelings themselves, but that they like to use the feelings of others. They will base their beliefs and their rituals on what they have experienced in daily life, and they enjoy making decisions and living life based on what they have done in the past, what has worked in the past, and taking into account the experiences of everyone else involved. An experience-based believer is going to really not care at all about tradition. Again, remember, experience is on the opposite side of tradition, because they don't care how it's always been done. They care about what makes the best experience for everyone involved. So this is true in the world of religion as it is in the world of just minor rituals throughout the day. Strengths of being an experience-based believer is that they're usually compassionate, they take into account the feelings of other people, and the weaknesses are that they are a little bit more easily to manipulate. If someone says, hey, come join my cult, an experience-based person might be like, well, I've got a perfectly good religion, but who knows, maybe this one's better and I need to just give it a try. Because remember, they make their decisions based on life experiences. So how would they know something is good or bad unless they've given it a shot? So sometimes it's a little bit easier to get them to try new things, which is both good and bad. So keep in mind with these four, I'm going to see if I can go back to the beginning here as we conclude. There it is. With these four sources of belief, faith, tradition, reason, and experience, remember, none of these is better than the other. Like, it's great to have reasons for what you believe if you're a reason-based believer, but you got to remember the flip side of that coin. You also need to have faith. So faith, the mystery, reason, data, those two go together. It's great to have traditions, but you also have to be open to new experiences, right? So it's important, ideally, we want to keep our minds open, and for a lot of people in the world of religion, keeping your mind open means placing yourself kind of right in the center of this diagram, right at the crosshairs. We want to be able to use a little bit of all four of these. Unfortunately, we don't usually. Most people will fall very heavily into one or maybe two of these, and that's where you will see people become very grounded in their own personal way of doing things. We've all met someone who's like way too into tradition, just like, this is the only way we can do it because it's the only way it's ever been done, period. Like, that's just purely tradition-based belief. Versus somebody, you know, who's maybe on the other side saying, you want to do what is going to be the most fun or like the best experience for everybody. The person who's way too grounded in faith and can't explain what they believe at all and can't even see that what they believe is a bad idea because they just take it on faith. So it's a good idea to be a little bit of all of these. But that's going to wrap up our video for today. Those are the four sources of belief. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.